Who can read the subject here on the blackboard? Yes? Social studies. And the topic is what? Bai Bureh, is that also? Bai Bureh. You have heard about a man called Bai Bureh, is that also?
Yes.
Bai Bureh was a great man. And he was born in 1840.
Sierra Leone's history is rich with heroes who in diverse ways contributed to the independence and freedom its citizens are enjoying today. One of these is the great Bai Bureh of Kase in the Potloko district, northern Sierra Leone.
Bai Bureh, in my view, is one of the most rational leaders we had in this country in the pre-colonial period up to the time the British declared a protectorate over the Sierra Leone hinterland in 1896. Before that declaration, Bai Bureh used to help the British in many of their campaigns in the northern part of this region. But despite that initial collaboration, he did not hesitate to challenge the British government when that government introduced certain measures that were not in the best interest of the people of the protectorate. And one such measure was a house tax, which was to be collected beginning January 1898. And I call it a house tax because colonial literature had tended to call it a hot tax. But the petitions that Bai Bureh and others wrote to the governor clearly indicated that they said they were unable to pay taxes on their houses, not huts. The governor did not listen to this. They sent about 2 or 3 petitions, and they are all there for people to see. So Bai Bureh and others did not just get up one morning to fight with the British government. They used constitutional channels.
When this did not work, Bai Bureh used the only language he thought the British would understand. Directing his anger against the British colonial administration, he waged a ferocious war in early 1898.
The war was so serious that at one point, Governor Cardew promised anybody who could bring Bai Bureh's head to him, he promised to give that person a compensation of £100. Bai Bureh reciprocated in like times and said, anybody who will bring Governor Cardew's head to me, I will give him £5,000. So that tells you the kind of person he was.
The war became so serious because of the guerrilla tactics employed by Bai Bureh that the British had to resort to some unusual tactics of their own to defeat him.
The war in the north was not fought in a highly forested area. This was more or less a savanna region, and it was during the dry season. And in an attempt to liquidate Bai Bureh and his warriors, the British forces set fire to the grasses there and burnt everything. And so it became very difficult for Bai Bureh and others to hide. And eventually, because of superior power and because of the scorched earth policy that the British used, they were able to defeat Bai Bureh. Bai Bureh was caught. Some people say he was surrendered. What is important here is that he lost the war, and as part of British policy then, he was exiled to the Gold Coast.
Many stories surround the defeat of Bai Bureh and the belief that he actually surrendered. Hence this song, which is still being sung in schools today.
The portrait that I used to see in many books was Bai Bureh seated on a chair after he had been arrested. That's not the best way to portray a hero. I have never used it. I like the one in the museum. At least you see him standing. You know, this thing about Bai Bureh was a warrior. He fought against the British. They made him surrender. Oh, Kotomarimu. I don't like that kind of thing. You know, it's part of the colonial literature. It's not a very good way of portraying our hero.
However, local history has it that because of the charms and mystical powers possessed by Bai Bureh, he would not have been defeated, but for the fact that he was betrayed by some of his own people.
The fact that an African could challenge the almighty inverted commas British. In those days itself was no mean achievement, was not a small achievement. You know, the fact that he could stand up to the British and challenge them was a big thing. And normally, you know, this is something that runs right through. People always associate indigenous warriors with some kind of mysticism, you know, and people could not believe that Bai Bureh and others could do the kind of thing they did. And so they did not think they were ordinary people.
Nevertheless, betrayal or not, surrender or not, one thing is very clear about the great Bai Bureh.
It is difficult to prove, but it could be possible. But what is important here is that whether the man had esoteric powers or not, he challenged the British and really fought them hard because but for reinforcements, but for collaboration with the local people. In fact, Kadiu and other officers even said that the war that Bai Bureh waged was one of the most ferocious they have ever experienced. You know, and this was a colonel, Frederick Kadiu, who was making that kind of statement.